Hello and welcome to episode 248 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Occasionally On Topic podcast. I'm your host for today, Peter Triezenberg, and joining me today we have Michael Sollosi.
Hello, everybody.
Joe Padilla.
Yo.
And Pete Leavitt.
Hi.
Today, listeners, is a very special day in Retro Encounter history, at least for me personally, because if you've been listening long enough, you know about my love affair with Mario Luigi Superstar Saga, and today we are finally covering that game, a Game Boy Advance classic that spawned one of my favorite Mario spin-off series and a companion piece to such games as Paper Mario and Super Mario RPG. And we are playing it now for your enjoyment. So, panelists, what is your history with the Mario RPGs? I'm going to start with you, Pete.
So, the first Mario RPG game I played was Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64. I don't know, the less glamorous younger brother of A Thousand Year Door, but it's a really, really great game, and I mostly watched my sister play it. We rented it probably in the early 2000s, and just remember being really taken aback at how funny it was. And the only other game I've played is actually this one, which I started playing a couple years ago, and I'm still on that same playthrough. But similarly, just bottomless charm and so much humor. So yeah, this is a really, from what I'm familiar with, it's a really, really great and fun series.
Paper Mario 2 has like a pretty dedicated fandom as well, and it's interesting how the two series complement each other. We might talk about that later. Joe, what about you? What's your history with the Mario RPG?
So, a little similar to Pete, actually. I have only played the original Paper Mario, actually when it was on the Wii Virtual Console. So I played that one, and if you would have asked me yesterday, that would have been it. But because Paper Mario: The Origami King just came out, I played a bit of that yesterday. So I got to see a bit of that because my partner really digs the Paper Mario series. So
how is Origami King?
I like it. I like what I've seen. It's extremely charming. I love the visual design, and it's got a great sense of humor to it.
Yeah, for sure. We in no way intended this, listeners. That is an pure coincidence. Mike, what about you, man? What's your history with the Mario RPGs?
Oh boy. Well, we recorded 2 episodes on Super Mario RPG for this podcast a few years ago.
Yeah,
and a more general episode on Mario RPGs. I think it was you, me, and John Tucker that did that one. So I've at least played that one. But my first Mario RPG was the Super Nintendo one. Pretty soon after it came out in 1996, I think. I played a lot of it at a sleepover with a friend who was Mario obsessed. So it was his copy of the game, but I eventually played it on my own. I really like that one. I never owned an N64, so I didn't play a Paper Mario game until the Wii era, where in the late 2000s, I played Paper Mario and Thousand Year Door back to back, and really, really loved both. But those are the only 2 Paper Mario games I've played. And then you look at the Mario and Luigi subseries, because I've always had Nintendo handhelds right around the time they came out. I have played the first 4. I played Superstar Saga, Partners in Time, Bowser's Inside Story, and Dream Team within a year or 2 of each of them coming out. And I think I've mentioned this on podcasts before, but my 3DS is a year of Luigi 3DS that came with Dream Team bundled in.
Nice.
So I've played, I guess there's, counting Origami King, there are 12 Mario RPGs, and I've played 7 of them, if my math is right. Yeah. And
I can't math.
Yeah, and I did play Superstar Saga around when it came out, maybe a year later or so. But I have not played it in 15 or 16 years. So I'm replaying it on the 3DS version, which I bought it over a year ago. I think I found it on sale somewhere, and it's been sitting in my 3DS game case untouched until last week when I started playing this baby.
Yeah, so it goes, right? Sometimes you just don't get rid of those games on the shelf for a while.
Oh yeah, I'm terrible about that too. My Steam library is maybe the worst culprit, but I have a tendency to buy something I really want, but not get to it until I'm sort of done with what I'm playing at the time, and then it gets kicked down the line. I'm horrible about that. My eyes are bigger than my stomach when it comes to buying video games.
Oh, yep, I totally understand that.
That's a story of human history ever since about 2004.
See, when did Lord Gabbin descend from on high and give us Steam?
Oh boy,
when Half-Life 2 came out.
I wonder what my oldest Steam game that I haven't played is, because I'm sure it's from some embarrassing date like 2005.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is that it gives you badges for how many unplayed games you have, and I'm scared.
Oh no!
Does it really?
It does.
That's
yes,
great.
There is a hoarder badge, and I think I have it. Oh, good times, good times. For me personally, Superstar Saga is actually my first Mario RPG. So I have a lot of nostalgia for this game. Obviously, listeners who have been listening to the show for a while will remember that my old forum handle and my omnipresent Twitter handle is I Have Fury, after one of the characters in this game, Fawful. I played Superstar Saga pretty much right when it came out. I was in elementary school at the time, and a friend of mine was super into the Mario games, and he turned me on to a lot of them. The Luigi's Mansion, this one, the Mario Party series, a lot of games that I have very fond memories of. But I specifically remember Superstar Saga because I was playing it on a backlit GBA on a car ride home from a field trip. So I played a good chunk of that game, like in the middle, in the back seat of someone's car, and then got a copy of my own later on, and I played the heck out of Superstar Saga back in the day. I think on another really recent episode, I mentioned that this is one of the few games I've beaten in one sitting on the Game Boy Advance. I beat Superstar Saga. I wouldn't call it a speed run, but I cleared it in about a 12-hour session. So back when I had much more free time and patience for these sorts of things. I haven't played it in a long time, though. Probably... honestly, it's probably been at least a decade, because I don't have a Game Boy Advance anymore, or an original DS that can play Game Boy Advance games. So it wasn't until the 3DS remake that I got a chance to experience Superstar Saga again. And let me tell you, this game, this remake what version? I should actually ask before we go on to talk about the remake. What version are we all playing? Are we all playing the 3DS port?
No, sir. I'm playing on the Game Boy Advance.
Wonderful, wonderful. That makes me happy, actually, because we can compare the two.
I'm playing on 3DS.
3DS, good.
I'm also playing on 3DS, but I did fire up my GBA copy and played the first 20 minutes just to check out differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. A lot of this game has unfortunately slipped through the cracks of my memory. So playing it now is very interesting because it's refreshing a lot of that. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember doing this a whole bunch of times. But oh man, this new version is so pretty, you guys. Like everything just looks so lush and colorful and detailed.
Yeah, the palette's really good, and one thing I remember from the GBA version is how expressive that the character models looked for being a GBA game, and it looks like that they've preserved the really brilliant color and expressive faces of the characters. Like I even had fun taking photos of the bros in the first 10 minutes in the 3DS version. It gives the sort of absurdist, cartoony visual style. It establishes that style in the first in the very beginning of the game. It was like the memories came flooding back, even though similar to you, it's been over 10 years since I've played this.
Yeah,
it's a pixel art masterclass. I mean, I'm looking at a scene right now, and I got Luigi here. He's like probably 24 pixels high, but the way that they just move and the way that they animate them, all those frames of animation, it is. And, I got Fawful right here too. Fawful's even smaller, but he's got that jetpack that just suction cups to his head, and his laugh when his teeth pop out. It's just so much going on with such little real estate.
Yeah, it has a wonderfully cartoony art style, and the Game Boy Advance version does a lot with what it had, and some of that a little bit did get lost in transition. I don't know if we'll get around to talking about that right away, but for the most part, I think the 3DS port is really solid. But if you're able to play the original, that is also not a bad way to play this game at all. It started a franchise for a reason. But like Mike said, I think we have one really good point that I think Mike made earlier was how quickly this game really just kicks off, It doesn't take long at all before, pretty much right from the opening cutscene, Peach's voice has been stolen and replaced with explosives. Quick, go save her. Oh, quick. Oh, no, you're on Bowser's airship now. Oh, no, you have to jump the border in Stardust Fields. It's pretty riotous for an opening.
I don't remember laughing out loud like I did when Peach's speech bubbles just started dropping bombs on everybody.
It's such a great it's such a great play on what's
it's like what
on the expression of like dropping a bomb.
Yeah,
I love it.
Her language is so foul it's literally destructive, which is again a very cartoonish concept, but totally fits in the context of this world. One thing I noticed that I think is true in both versions. You get tutorials in this game, but I think all of the tutorials are necessary and reasonable, and don't waste your time too hard. Like, because at least in the first half of the game, you're getting new powers or some new complication to gameplay in every new zone, and they basically explain it to you at a reasonable level and then just throw you back into the game, and it never feels like too much, because there's a lot of complaints people make about games holding like being too hand-holdy or over-explaining themselves, but every time there's a tutorial and the first tutorial is on that airship about 10 minutes in, it's like, oh, okay, now I know how to do this, and then you're just let go for the rest of the game. And even though I'm probably 6 or 7 tutorials in now where I am, I wish tutorials were all this clean and reasonable.
And what they managed to do remarkably is they keep the writing style and the characterizations and the humor, but also I feel like if you do that, there's a possibility you could muddy up the instruction, but they make it very, very clear what you're supposed to do, but it's still in keeping, and they break the fourth wall or whatever, but in some small ways, but it's in keeping with the characterizations and the world and the humor in a way that it's not very utilitarian for a tutorial. It's very artistically done, but at the same time it pulls off its actual utilitarian purpose.
I agree that the tutorials are just really seamless, and it just presents it really simply with it. I didn't get as much out of the opening for it. I was just like, oh, okay, just thrown into another like Mario thing, and part of that is probably the context in which I'm playing it in, where I'm like alternating, as Mike is as well. I'm alternating between this and Tactics Ogre, and I think sometimes when I'm playing it, I think I have a little bit too much of Tactics Ogre brain. And I think that changes up my enjoyment of it a bit.
I'm also double fisting Tactics Ogre and Superstar Saga, and it's a strange tonal change. I don't think it's quite as strange as when I was playing Mother 3 and Yakuza 0 at the same time. but still a different one.
It's a dramatic tonal shift.
I mean, I was doing the Mother 3 and Yakuza 0 thing too, and I strangely didn't get that same like sense of whiplash. I don't know why though. Like I was like, yeah, you know, it's like your peanut butter and jelly. You're like, yeah, you got your Mother 3, you got your Yakuza 0. These things go together, right? And I don't know why my brain is like, oh yes, Mario and Luigi and Tactics Ogre. Those things are deeply juxtaposed. But this Game Boy Advance JRPG about a boy's family and dancing in late 1980s Japan are like, they're like, yeah, that's fine. They go together.
I have a question about that, Joe, and Michael as well. You can chime in. What do you think of the writing and the characterizations and the prose in Tactics Ogre? Right. I only ask because we talk a lot about how funny and light and charming Superstar Saga is, but I just want to remind people of some of the serious writing and some of the really thought-provoking prose that goes on in here. I have a little excerpt. It's tiny. I'll read it for you real quick. This is Fawful in the opening cutscene. And I mean, really take yourself back there because the emotional weight is incredible here. He says, Princess Peach's sweet voice will soon be the bread that makes a sandwich of Cacaletta's desire. And this battle shall be the delicious mustard on that bread, the mustard of your
doom. Yep, I remember.
End quote.
I remember. I wasn't expecting a dramatic reading of Fawful's dialogue, but I'm glad we have this.
I remember Mustard of Your Doom specifically because I played this game at the same time as one of my other friends, who, if anything, was more delighted by it than I even was, and she still quotes Mustard of Your Doom at least in recent years.
Mustard of Your Doom is eternal, and I really find fascinating Fawful's fascination with condiments and such, because later I believe he refers to Cacaletta's plan as something like buttering the plan. I think when they capture Princess Peach, she will be the butter
over the Bean Kingdom.
That's what it is. Thank you.
Yes. Is no one going to point out the fact that Peach just said the mustard of your doom is eternal? Like, come on. That pun was just sitting there.
You did it just now. It didn't occur to me.
This whole game is really food themed. I mean, the princess is named Peach. The kingdom is named after beans. This is the same studio that did Tomato Adventure. You got your Cola. Yeah, there's just a lot of food imagery in I guess in the entire oeuvre of Alpha Dream, R.I.P.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we should. I do want to backpedal just a second to talk about tutorials again, but I should mention, yes, Alpha Dream, the company that made the Mario and Luigi games, unfortunately filed for bankruptcy last year after a string of less than successful releases, including the 3DS remakes of this and Bowser's Inside Story, which really sucks because I think they were really talented developers, and I was kind of hoping to get to branch out beyond the Mario and Luigi series at some point, which, I mean, and this ties into the point I wanted to make about tutorials. Fans have been complaining about the stagnation of both Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi for several entries now. One big problem that became apparent in Dream Team, although Dream Team is still, I think, a pretty good game, was...
Dream Team is pretty good, but man, that game is like 45 hours when it should be 25, especially since the four previous Mario and Luigi games are all rather brisk compared to Dream Team.
Yeah, Dream Team is too padded out, but also the thing we were mentioning with the tutorials, Dream Team would bring those tutorials up, and they did feel like roadblocks. They did feel like interruptions. Whereas this game does it a lot more eloquently, and one thing they did do to address that was to make the tutorials a little more optional. Instead of constantly stopping to explain mechanics to you, it gets added to a little guidebook that you can click on and read and practice the moves if you want to.
I think there was a move practicing option in the GBA version. I thought it was remarkable the way that this 17-year-old game presented tutorials in a way that felt very very elegant and smart, because I've played too many games where I feel burdened by tutorials and burdened by like explaining dialogue bubbles and stuff. But in this game, like they just give you a short tutorial that's playable and tied in easily every time there's a new mechanic, and then they sort of set it and forget it in a way that it felt remarkable to me in 2020 when it shouldn't be this remarkable. Like, this should be an oh, this is a good tutorial and that's it. But now it's like, man, I wish more tutorials were like this. What a weird thought to have.
Yeah, but I do hope that the Mario and Luigi series continues on in some form at some point. It's weird because Nintendo seems to have kind of a weird thing about doing original stuff with the Mario IP now. They said as much in a recent interview about the new Paper Mario Origami King, which is unfortunate because some of the best things in Superstar Saga and Partners in Time and all those other games is the original characters, the sense of humor, and just kind of the willingness to play around with the established Mario formula. Like I'm like we've already talked about Fawful, Cackaletta, the Witch, the whole Bean Kingdom in general is just it's different, but it fits in the Mario universe. Like it's just this makes sense as an addition to Nintendo's oeuvre. I like it quite a bit, and I hope that we can get more of that at some point. It's a personality that I think has been lacking from some recent entries.
And the personality of Mario RPGs has always been, I don't know, somewhat anarchic, like very. I associate all of them with humor and really fun visual pieces, and a lot of like silliness in basic things like combat and puzzle solving. That is a good silliness and not a bad silliness. So like I thought that Superstar Saga felt like it fit in alongside other good Mario RPGs, and even it shares some staff with original Mario RPG. I mean, Yoko Shimomura did the music for both games, and I think the writing is a strength, and Mario RPGs had this really good tone and style to them for many, many years, but they have fallen off a little bit. Like I think that I never played Paper Jam or the later.
Paper Jam's easily the weakest link in the whole series.
Yeah. That's what I heard. And I haven't played many of the later Paper Mario games, but I believe the popular consensus is like they have not been good recently. Even though they're still funny, they don't strike the highs of the older ones, which is a little disappointing. And with Alpha Dream going bankrupt, it feels like it's like, I don't know, it's maybe less likely rather than more likely that Mario and Luigi will return strong again.
I have this kind of I don't know. I have this thing where something about an older game that is, and even in some minor way, unsurpassed by later games, even in the same series. I really get a kick out of it. I really enjoy that that's the case. I like how even an older game can stand on its own, even though there have been innovations and advancements since it came out. And I really feel like this is an example of that. You don't have to worry so much about playing the later ones that you may think are weak. You can just play this one and it's great. If you never played one of these games before, you can just play this and it's maybe nearish to the peak of the series, and you don't have to worry about getting overly frustrated because you may think that the newer games may have some convenience or some innovation that you're missing out on.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it for sure.
I mean, basically, retro games can be good. Yes, I agree. But I think that the underlying point is that even though this was early in the lifespan of Mario RPGs, it holds up and is and even playing it in 2020 on the GBA, it's far from unplayable. It's still a good feeling game despite being 17 years old.
Yeah, there are a couple of moments in this where I was like, I feel like I'm in Kingdom Hearts for a second because of how the music.
Oh, no one wants that. Oh.
No, I was happy with that. Like when earlier on in the game, when Bowser stuck like when Bowser's stuck in the cannon, the music was playing and it sounded to me like Twilight Town, and that was kind of cool. She's such a diverse and brilliant composer, but she does have some ticks that it's fun to kind of pick up on that.
Yeah. The music is a real strength. I mean, there's a part later on that we'll get to probably next episode. Yeah, definitely next episode. But it's in a kind of beachy tropical area, and I was remarking at how much it took the edge off. Here's a little spoiler of a minor thing, but I felt very frustrated at that part of the game, actually. But the music really carried me a lot of the way there to finally get through it. And it's such a beautiful piece, and there's so many that are just as good.
Shimomura has a way of that. Like, even some of the most frustrating parts of games she's composed, Looking at You, Hollow Bastion, have just such good music that it's like, oh, this is nice. I'm enjoying the fact that this is frustrating. No, you're right, Disujo. Stardust Fields is such a bopper. that song is
Yeah, that's a great one.
It looks so pretty, too. Like, this is, again, me geeking out over the graphical updates in the remake, but I just love how detailed everything is.
It's very lively on the GBA version too. It's really pretty.
For sure. What do we think of the jumping the border gag?
Love it. It's how immigration should be.
I support decriminalization of all border crossings, and so yeah, I think they did it well.
I thought it was amusing, although I think that border crossings should be, at least a little bit monitored nowadays because of a certain pandemic. But in
less
general,
about letting people in and more about making sure we don't leave.
Yeah. In general, I thought the border crossing was an amusing moment, but slightly more amused by basically the first boss of the game being an unpleasant border agent.
I also Tollstar.
Tollstar.
Like extorts you for currency, and then it's like, well, I have to match it to the current exchange rate. Guess what? You're broke.
That's a funny joke. If a little bit like, oh, come on.
Really? Yeah, I played around with that because I wanted to see if the coins you collected would change at all. It doesn't. So I'm pretty sure he's talking out of his butt.
Oh, he just stole from you.
He's a much lamer version of Mr. Shakedown.
Honestly, I was kind of hoping it was going to be Wart at first when I first saw him, but alas, poor Yorick. Super Mario Bros. 2 gets no love.
Or Link's Awakening gets no love, except on this podcast where we did 3 episodes on it.
Did eventually get a gorgeous remake, but that's neither here nor there. After that, the Hoo Hoo Mountain area is pretty fun too. Then you get you get introduced to a couple more side characters from the game. Prince Peasley's another fan favorite of mine. The way he flips his hair and the whole screen glows.
He's freaking fabulous, man. Love him.
The rainbow flash and the way he artfully flips his hair and cape is excellent.
He's magnificent. I really love Peasley, and he's so good-natured. That all princes would be such.
Mario games have an oddly optimistic view of monarchies.
At least in Bean Bean and Mushroom Kingdom, it's there's we don't need to give counter examples, but in general, it is. I think that Queen Bean and Prince Peasley are both amusing, positive characters.
I mean, the real question that we're asking and that we're dancing around is: would they support, the removal of all monarchies in the world? Is that something that we ask of Mario and Luigi? Probably not.
Probably not. Because their whole
I'm pretty sure Prince Peasley would be just fine with it, though, as long as he could, go to the salon every week and everything. I'm sure he'd be fine.
Yeah, he'll be happy. Just give him some hair products.
Oh, he needs his fencing practice too, because that guy can fence. That guy's a swordsman.
Unfortunately, Mario and Luigi's job is to restore order to the monarchy every time.
Yeah, they actually had to save the day by plumbing for once in this game, which was an amusing twist.
Oh, that's one of the funniest parts of the game. Yeah, when you get to Bean Bean Castle and they have to literally fix the plumbing.
So it turns out it was evil plumbing.
I do have a word about this part. I think this was where I hit my first stumble where I stopped playing for a while. It's like you got to fix 7 plumbing problems, or I can't remember how many there was, but I remember just the maze-like map. Almost, I feel like a lot of the screens kind of look the same. I feel like it was maybe a little easy to get turned around, and it was a little bit of a sign of things to come for me, because it was this thing where I was driven on by the hope of like the next interaction, the next cutscene, the next dialogue. But I felt like maybe they could have cut some of the fluff of this part. Because I really did stop for a little bit at this part.
Well, let's talk about the world design for a little bit then, because I think that actually bears interesting. It's interesting how different it is from the other Mario RPGs in a lot of ways, but also some of the stuff they carry over as well. Mario and Luigi as a series in general tends to have kind of not quite a Zelda-esque overworld, but it's a top-down perspective. You have multiple zones that kind of intersect and interconnect with each other, and you can unlock shortcuts, and as you get new powers, more zones become available to you. Almost Metroid-y, if that makes sense, but not like...
It's a little non-linear action exploration, or whatever you want to substitute for Metroidvania.
Zelda's a good comparison.
Yeah, I think Zelda's a good comparison. I don't know. I didn't think the dungeon navigation was that bad in this game. It's
not. It's nowhere near. The puzzles are very simple, I think. It's basically a question of using your powers and applying them in specific points. And the game, to its credit, I think the game does a really good job of the rule of threes, essentially, for puzzle design, where you get a simple one to introduce you to what you need to do. You get a slightly more complicated version of it that introduces a new variable, and you get a final version of it that requires you to put all your knowledge to the test.
And they do one thing that I find very irritating about Zelda games sometimes. I should say they do one thing better than Zelda that I find irritating about Zelda, and that some Zelda items are used in just the dungeon that you get them, and then one puzzle for a heart piece later in the game, and are otherwise completely lost or forgotten. I'm sorry to attack your favorites, Peter, but I'm thinking of like the spinner in Twilight Princess.
Oh, you're not wrong.
and also the ball and chain in that same game. But in Superstar Saga, you learn some jump powers in Stardust Fields, and then you get hammers and learn some hammer powers in Chucklehuck Woods, and then you get hand powers in in Oho Oasis and Oho Ocean, and you basically consistently use those 3 suites of 2 to 4 abilities each for the entire game. Like you're still using high jump and spin jump at the point where I am right now in Oho Ocean, and those are the abilities you get right at the beginning of the game. So I think that it's a pretty reasonable clip of puzzle solving progression that sort of stays consistent and gets more complicated. And Pete, I mean, I'm not sure where you are in the game right now, but I don't like you might be in for some ruder awakenings if you thought that the Bean Castle puzzles were rough. I thought that Woohoo University was a bit more of a slog than the Bean Castle.
It is. I've had those rude awakenings.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think you're a little bit ahead of where I am.
And I do agree with you certainly that because you have fewer verbs than in something like Zelda. What in Zelda would be an item, in Mario they're just like abilities, and you have fewer, so they do have more opportunity to use even the early ones, and it is usually all very natural, and it works. The way you cycle through them on the GBA using the shoulder buttons and everything is at the end you do end up with, it seems like quite a lot of powers, but it's not that many. It's all very manageable.
It's between 6 and 10, whether you call swinging your hammer like in a normal way a power or not.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like this was one of those situations that is a sign of many things to come, many other scenarios to come in the game, where it's like your objective is right there, and then they put you through like a 45-minute dungeon, and much of it, there's usually not any dialogue or anything, so much of it to me kind of felt like a little bit of busy work, where it's like it's right there. What were you doing in Bean Castle? You're trying to free the queen or something, right?
You're trying to restore power to the room where the Beanstar is kept. And,
the Beanstar, that's right.
Yeah, and Cacletta is disguised as the Queen's attendant, but
Correct.
you don't know this yet. So you're going down to fix the plumbing to unlock the door to the Beanstar, and when you do so, Cacletta and Falfel shed their costumes and say, "Haha! Now you are the, I don't know, ketchup of failure," or whatever they say. And then they abscond with the Beanstar, which continues the story along. And Queen Bean is the boss at the end of that phase because
She's like possessed or something.
Yeah, she ate like some kind of bad tapeworm or something that turned her into a monster.
Yeah, so and that was the thing of like, go down to this dungeon for nearly an hour, fix the plumbing, and like the door that's right next to the door you walked into the place, you know, like right next to the first room of the castle or whatever, will open. And that kind of thing did just kind of rub me the wrong way, and it kind of happens a lot in this game. But what I'm finding now that I'm in a rhythm with it again, even though I'm later on, and there are more examples of that kind of frustration, is the degree to which the humor and writing really make up for it. Is like, sometimes it feels almost like a superficial thing that shouldn't be powerful enough to make up for those kinds of frustrations that I'm experiencing. But it truly is all worth it when you go through and you have an interaction, after you defeat the Queen in this case, and you get to listen to Cacletta and Fawful, and then you talk to everyone around Bean Bean Castle. It's all very nice. So there's humor and there's fun there. So it did make it worth it.
Maybe it's just because I'm lightly dead inside, but it's kind of like nothing in this game has felt onerous to me. Like I felt like minor annoyances and such, but nothing that is like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here. I guess it's just kind of, the writing isn't really hitting me, and maybe it'll kind of, I'm hoping that it'll kind of, I'll enjoy it more as I go on, but I found myself not really having a whole lot to say in general about the game so far. I'm decently into the third part of it, probably pretty close where Sollosi is. And so it's like, I don't know, it's a bit of a difficult game because I tend to have a lot of thoughts and I don't.
I think that's valid in terms of like, it's not a particularly deep story. I mean, it's Mario. It's a parody video game of other RPGs that draws on the Mario universe and plays with it in some fun ways. And it's not necessarily like super deep or insightful or like avant-garde or anything, but I do think it I think it has merit and I find it enjoyable. I can definitely see like if you were looking for something a little more, because I mean, Thousand Year Door, for example, just to like pull in another Mario RPG that everyone really likes, Thousand Year Door has like a lot of surprisingly dark moments for a Mario game.
That opening area is like a dangerous crime town or something.
Yeah, and I think that's like the flip side of the coin almost from Superstar Saga, where Superstar Saga is very light, very colorful, always tongue-in-cheek, and I appreciate that and I enjoy that. And the Mario and Luigi games, like, I mean, they only get sillier. Bowser's Inside Story is literally like Osmosis Jones but with Mario.
It's Osmosis Jones if it also had kaiju battles, and it introduces like those Globin characters that might be even sillier than Fawful.
Yeah, I was gonna say the hemoglobins are like some of my favorite things in all of gaming.
Yeah, see, I was thinking of Magic School Bus, but Osmosis Jones is good.
Rip.
Magic School Bus, the author for that recently passed away. And I mean, you could also say Fantastic Voyage. It was if you want to go real old school about it.
Oh yeah.
But no, Joe, I don't think that's I think that's a reasonable take to have, like, if you're not like feeling it like right out of the gate.
I mean, between those three different viewpoints, I'm probably closest to agreeing with Peter. I welcome puzzly RPGs. If anything, I think that RPGs of the 2010s have moved too far away from including puzzles.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike, but I miss dungeons in games.
Yeah. Dungeons and puzzles are an endemic part of RPGs to me, and a game that sort of delights in weird puzzles is fun to me. And I don't know. Again, I'm only a little bit past that halfway point. I think Joe and I are probably within 20 minutes of each other gameplay wise. But I haven't found any of the navigation stuff to be that challenging or annoying. Everything either just requires a little bit more experimentation or exploration, or if you notice a hidden treasure on the field, like, oh, okay, I can't smash this rock yet, I'll come back later, going back to those light Metrovania elements or light Zelda elements. And this isn't a huge world, but it is pretty densely packed with stuff, and there's fast travel between 10 or 12 pipes, which is
fast travel is a godsend.
Yeah, but in general, and I mean, Peter mentioned that he played this game in a single 12-hour session once. This is a 15 to 20-hour game typically, so I think that it's a pretty breezy RPG, and around the time you're starting to get tired of it or it wears out its welcome, at least in my feeling, it's almost over. So I'm having, again, I played this once 15 years ago, and now I'm sort of either remembering or half remembering things, and so it's like some things come as a surprise, but most of them don't. I still think that it's consistently funny, and even though it's trying to be funny, it's got jokes. It doesn't exist and be funny like a brilliant comic actor or something, but this game is amusing and is one of the funnier RPGs I've played, and does so in a way that is enjoyable. It doesn't have the dark or profound moments that Thousand Year Door has, which I think is probably still my favorite Mario RPG. I mean, that game, like, you saw someone turn off a computer in that game and tears came to your eyes. But Superstar Saga is sort of breezy and funny and somewhat dense with mechanics for a GBA game, and I think it's successful in all fronts. I on the GBA episode a month or two ago, I thought it was one of the best GBA games, full stop, and I stand by it.
I'm going to make a terrible analogy here.
I love terrible analogies. We were doing sports analogies to characters in Tactics Ogre a few weeks ago, Joe.
It's so good.
If Thousand Year Door is like a tall, savory glass of Pinot Noir, Superstar Saga is like a 6-pack of White Claws.
I'm offended by that analogy.
I point you once again to the incredible prose I quoted earlier.
Superstar Saga
and defy you.
Superstar Saga is like a mustard. Is like the mustard of your doom, and Thousand Year Door is like
the butter on bean kingdom.
A 5-star cuisine featuring buttered beans.
See, there's for me the game feels like and this is like not to detract from anyone else's experience, of course. It feels like a 6 out of 10 movie, where it's like, which that probably sounds quite reductive of it, but it's like, I don't know. I don't really. There have been games where they've had certain mechanics that I'm like, I could write a book on how much I hate the crafting system or the block puzzles in Vagrant Story, and yet I'm a very like big fan of that game. I really love that game, and so it kind of has. I tend to, I guess, gravitate more towards things that have more peaks and valleys, and this just feels pleasant to me, and I guess I don't do well with pleasant.
I mean, I used the adjective breezy earlier, and I think that's consistent. Right. Like this is a breezy game, and none of the themes or story challenges you mentally or emotionally. But I don't know about you. I could write 10,000 words on Mario hitting Luigi with a hammer, burying Luigi underground, then Luigi digging underground, jumping up into a barrel, Mario jumping on the barrel to hit a switch with his hammer, standing on top of the barrel Luigi.
That's all stuff I love. I agree.
It is. Sorry, Mike.
The visual set pieces in the puzzle solving and in combat, like I think like watching bros attacks play out is almost always amusing. It is part of the fun of it. And this is a silly, breezy RPG that is mostly save the princess, find 5 MacGuffins, and then end game, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But I don't know. I really enjoy this game, but I accept that it is not subversive or darker or challenging narratively.
I will say regarding the combat, I didn't think I would feel this way, but at this point I have to be honest, and I am very conflicted about the combat. I feel like the combat simultaneously buoys this game up and drags it down. It's wild. It's really creative. There's often a lot of humor built into it. It's really fun at first. And again, it's probably just my stage in life. Like I'm trying to get through games. I really don't have that much time, even in lockdown. I got a family and stuff. Like I don't have that much time, so that might play into it. I might just be the old man here, so I apologize. And do reiterate that this is a great game, but I felt the combat was like a touch too frequent for me. Even though you can avoid many encounters, I personally failed to avoid just beyond the threshold of what I was cool with. And so the thing is also is it is very much a mindset thing, because when I'm in, like, let's say a more receptive mood and I'm just giving myself over to the moment when I play this and I'm engaging with the combat and not trying to rush through it, or I for a while I had 0 coins because I was trying to run away from everything. I was so frustrated, and not frustrated with the difficulty. I just didn't want to fight. I needed to get to where I was going.
It's kind of a thing with RPGs in general is like, and I
totally
problem now. When I was a kid, I would run away from every fight because I wanted to get where I was going. Now I am like a compulsive grinder, and I want to like this is why it takes me longer than normal to beat Dragon Quest games, Mike, because I have to grind so I can buy every single piece of new equipment in every town. Like
my best friend is playing Dragon Quest 11 right now. He has not gotten through the end of Act 1, but he's been playing it for 45 hours because he's trying to craft every single item you can craft.
Yes.
And I keep telling him, like, I know you think you have to do this, but I promise you don't. And then he responds, no, I have to do this. And then I roll my eyes, and that's a version of conversations he and I have had for 25 years. But in general, I find it frustrating going back to games that have random encounters, because I value my time more now that I'm in my 30s than I did when I was in my 20s or teens, or goodness gracious, I didn't value time at all when I was 8 and playing RPG, getting into RPGs for the first time. But I mean, maybe I'm just more used to this kind of game than Pete is, because when I felt a little bit fatigued from too much combat, I was able to avoid it for the most part, or even run away from combat. You get prizes in Bean Bean Town if you run away from enough fights. So, like,
I will reiterate that, or I will make sure to make it clear that it is a bit of an attitude adjustment that I experienced even in this latest session when I just played the game like yesterday or whatever. When I started off that session, that like 45-minute session or whatever, I was trying to run away from stuff with varying degrees of success. But after about 15 minutes, I just surrendered myself to the combat and had a killer time, and I loved it. So that's why feel so weird about the combat, and why I feel it simultaneously favors the game and detracts from it, in my experience.
I think sometimes you just don't vibe with something. I mean, I haven't beaten a single Tales of game because the combat system reminds me too much of fighting games, and I'm terrible at fighting games.
I love fighting games, and that's how I got into the Tales of series.
Yeah, right. And it's like there's other things about those series that appeals to me, but there is a certain level of resistance because I don't 100% gel with the combat. So no, Pete, I think your perspective on that is 100% valid. For me personally, I like the combat in the Mario and Luigi games, although I actually do have a minor. This is not a gripe with the game itself, but a gripe personally. Timing mechanics in RPGs actually do tend to annoy me quite a bit. We should probably take this opportunity to explain how the combat in Mario and Luigi works.
The combat is almost the same in every RPG style Mario RPG.
It's the same. Press the button right before you land a hit in order to do extra damage. What Mario and Luigi does that's quite clever, and this is something that carries over to navigation as well, which I wanted to touch on. Mario is controlled with the A button and Luigi is controlled with the B button. The brothers move as a unit, and you can switch their positions around in order to do different things. As you unlock more powers, you get more verbs, which you can use to explore the world and in battle. So it's it's all very meshed together very nicely.
It's way more elegantly presented in the GBA version, because in the GBA version, it's you switch with the start button, and then you switch sort of who is holding what with the L and R buttons in a way that that sort of makes the 5 buttons L, R, A, B, start sort of interact very smartly together. But in the 3DS version, you basically just scroll between different abilities with L and R, and or choose them from a touch screen, and it does the positional switching and whatnot for you.
And while I agree that that's a little easier, it's like it does lose just a little bit of the personality from the Game Boy Advance version.
It's more elegant in the Game Boy Advance version. This way, it feels like it's almost like the opposite of Link's Awakening and its remake. In Game Boy Link's Awakening, it's annoying going to the menu to switch items all the time, and in the remake, you have more buttons to equip items to, so it's way faster and more elegant. In this one, you go into the menus more and switch on the field less, so it feels, even though it's slightly smoother sometimes, it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's just one of the weird things about remaking games like this. For the most part, the Superstar Saga remake is very, very faithful to the original, but it's just a couple little minor chinks in the armor that versus the original game that I think that there's some things that they fixed that I appreciate, like you don't lose coins when you run away now. You just flee. That's nice. I don't like wasting coins. In fact, I have more coins than...
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. They changed the combat system ever so slightly to line up with the more recent Mario and Luigi games. So now you do the double jump in battle where you press A once and then you press A again to do a follow-up attack with more damage.
They do add in the 3DS version a feature that no matter what you're equipped with on the field, pressing X is a simultaneous jump, which is very handy. Yeah, I welcome that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. So there's a lot of quality of life improvements in the 3DS version that I do genuinely love and agree with. But again, the original just had a certain charm about it that I like. But moving on back into combat, we've talked a lot about the combat, but Joe, I did want to get your thoughts on it as well. Are you enjoying the combat system?
I do enjoy some of it. It's like I was saying, I'm just having difficulty with just...
It's okay.
Thinking of things for this. It's just like, it's fine. I like some of the.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to make sure.
No. I appreciate that. It's got a the sort of rhythm that you keep with it is kind of fun. It reminds me a bit of, well, even though Mother 3 came later, it reminds me of that because I played it recently. And some of the bros attacks are charming, but it works.
One piece of advice I have, maybe you don't need this advice, is don't hoard items and use bros attacks often, because there are item BP restoring blocks pretty frequent, and syrup items for restoring your BP are not uncommon. So battles will go by faster, and you'll have more fun with special attacks if you use bros attacks all the time. Sometimes you get into a hoarder mentality where you shouldn't spend MP, you shouldn't use items in an RPG, so you use regular attacks or free attacks often, and I think that makes combat way more boring. Like I've gotten better at this as I've gotten older. Just spend your damn MP or BP, as it were, because like battles will go by faster, and you'll have more fun, and you'll still have enough items to mess around.
I think what kind of disappoints me with this is that in different, like in Paper Mario, you get different partners that would be in combat with you, and when it's just, even though this is a shorter game, when it's just Mario and Luigi, I'm like, because there's only two people in your party essentially, and I think from other RPGs, it just seems to be a bit of a step down, and is just kind of focusing on two characters that I've played a lot of their games, but I don't really have much of an affinity necessarily towards. Like if there was like a playable Toad in the game, or a Shy Guy, or something, if there were other...
They should bring back Gino, is what you're saying.
I might be saying that. Yeah, like if they had Gino, Mallow, like, I mean, if you have... If there were kind of more characters, I think I would be more endeared to the system. But it's just like, this is Mario and this is Luigi. They use hammers and they use their feet.
Joe, do you know about the Geno cameo?
In this game?
Yeah.
I have heard about it, yes.
Yeah, so that was what Mike was referring to, is that in the Game Boy Advance original, there is a reference to Geno, the puppet character from Mario RPG, and it's a mini-game. It's a blink and you'll miss it cameo, but it's only in the Game Boy Advance version. The 3DS version cuts it. I don't know if it's rights issues with Square or whatever, but it's sad. I liked that. It was cute.
In the credits to it, they do credit the character of Geno as being a property of Square, and so it didn't seem like a complicated rights discussion. Maybe they just asked and they said yes in 2003 and no in 2017.
They were making nice with Square in 2003 with the release of Crystal Chronicles and all those Game Boy Advance ports. So I'm guessing it probably might have been a little easier to be like, hey, can we borrow that for a second? But then again, they also put Geno costumes into Smash Ultimate. So what do I know? I don't know anything.
And speaking of minigames, this game consistently rolls one at you, like if not every hour, every few hours. And in the sort of larger bean collecting side quest, there is one variety of bean that you only get from minigames. So indulging in them is useful for getting higher end accessories and stat up items. But yeah, I don't know if I need all of these mini games. Like even from the jump rope one at the very beginning of the game in Stardust Fields, it's like, do I really want to take this one up to the highest level? Because I don't know. I have podcasts about Tactics O Grand Mario to record.
Yeah, you definitely don't need to do them all, but grinding for beans is to make different coffees with at Egad's Cafe is fun, if only for the cutscenes you unlock. And Luigi's Mansion is one of my favorite games, so I'm just glad that Egad gets more time.
The individual audio for different characters is really amusing. Both the pseudo Italian nonsense that the brothers say, and like the little vocal cues from Fawful and Egad. It's not fully voiced, not even remotely close to it, but just I don't know. I thought the vocal cues were really cute in this game.
If Joe or Pete, if you guys end up playing more of the Mario and Luigi games, I would recommend Bowser's Inside Story next, because
I've had my eye on that one for a long time.
Partners in Time is not as good as Bowser's Inside Story, but Mario saying "babies" is pretty great.
Partners in Time has some funny scenes, but Fawful graduates to main antagonist in Bowser's Inside Story, and oh my son,
that's delicious. I'm kind of with Joe in the sense that like I didn't really have much affinity. I play and enjoy Mario games before, but I didn't have like much affinity for the characters. But that personality that you spoke of and those Italianisms, kind of, you know, vocal things and their expressions and the way that they move when they speak actually won me over big time for these guys. I did feel a much bigger connection to them for that reason. It's just, you know, very funny and charming and sweet.
Talked quite a bit about our first impressions on Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, first re-impressions in mine and Mike's case. I think it's definitely one of those games that some of us have fond memories of, and some of us are playing for the first time and kind of being like, well, I don't know what I expected, but I'm still disappointed. I'm just messing. But what do we think for the podcast part 2? We're going to play up till the end of the game, and I know that I think all three of you are actually further than I am on this playthrough because I just finished Woo University.
I'm maybe 45 minutes past you or something. I'm not that much further ahead. But
what do we expect from the game going forward? Is there anything we're hoping to see going forward? Let's going around. I'm going to start with you, Sollosi.
Right now, I mentioned at the beginning, I'm sort of half remembering this game as I play it, and I think that is going to basically continue. But I want to see how the boss battles are in the second half of the game, because I remember what the final battle is, but I don't remember, and I remember sort of the order of events the story takes, but I don't remember a lot of specific enemies or boss fights, so I'm looking forward to rediscovering them again one by one, because some of them were really fun. I loved fighting a sentient bottle of evil soda that gets stronger if you tell it jokes. And Bowser's role as the amnesiac rookie is an amusing bit of dialogue that I enjoy continuing to see. So yeah, I don't remember everything about this game perfectly. I beat it once more than 15 years ago, and I'm looking forward to the rediscovery of all the things I've forgotten.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Joe?
I'm hoping that I am more affectionate towards this game as it winds to the end of it. I know there are certain things about it that I just know that I'm not going to get. Like, I'm not going to get more playable characters, and like there are certain things that I would ask of this game for it to be something that I'd really love that it's just not going to do. And so I'm just going to kind of make my peace with that and try to enjoy it for what it is rather than my expectations of what I would want it to be, like a parent.
That's a wonderful analogy.
Poignant.
I do hope that you find something to enjoy about it, Joe. Because I mean, just speaking as a fan of the game, I have a lot of affection for it, and I like spreading the love. But I'll be very curious to hear what you think of the latter half of the game. And what about you, Pete? What have you got for us?
Well, right now I think I'm in the third act.
All right.
So I've seen some of the things that are coming. There's some really great things. I unfortunately, even from where I am, I expect to be a little miffed by some of the fetch quest stuff for the MacGuffins, but I expect to really enjoy the last bit. The last boss fight, I hope, is very funny and fun. So that's kind of what I expect. But there's some stuff coming up that I just passed that I would never have predicted at this point. That's pretty good. So
I think I know what you're talking about, and I'm looking forward to discussing it next time on Retro Encounter. So just to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick, next week we can expect more Mario and Luigi, so you can hear the follow-up to this discussion. Later this month, we are doing our 250th episode and a new quiz show. Coming in September, we're doing a game journal on Persona 2 Innocent Sin. I think, Joe, are you going to be on that one?
I am.
All right, that's going to be exciting. Persona 2 is like literally the redheaded stepchild of the Persona franchise, but it's also like...
Okay. Tatsuya does have red hair. Yes, I understand.
That was a joke. Yes,
I did not understand it first.
It's a great game and often overlooked, unfortunately, by modern Persona fans. So I am looking forward to listening to that episode and learning what all the hype is about.
I am not going to be on those episodes. I think I've been on too many in a row, but I did play Innocent Sin a few years ago, not for the podcast, on my own time, and really, really liked it. It's dark, weird, and interesting, and is a sort of a different time for Atlas than the like the big fan favorite they are nowadays. So I'm very interested in hearing Joe's and the other panelists' thoughts when they record those episodes.
Absolutely. And like we said earlier, if you want to get in touch with us with questions for the 250 episode or just general inquiries, reach out to retro@rpgfan.com. There are all kinds of ways you can interact with us. You can visit our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, Discord. We do Twitch streaming every day. You can listen to more podcasts like Random Encounter, Rhythm Encounter. It's happening, we promise. And our buddies over at Phoenix Edge. Review us on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do appreciate your feedback, and it helps us be a better show, and it helps spread the word around. As far as social media goes, if you want to find me, you can reach out at I Have Fury on Twitter. I'm also available Peter T at rpgfan.com. Mike, where can we reach you?
The easiest way to find me is on Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs at other times, and in RPG Fans Discord, I am Monsoon Mike.
What about you, Joe?
So you can find me at on RPG Fans social media accounts. I'm one of our social media people. And you can also find me personally on Twitter, Discord, and Instagram as at Eva Least.
All right. And what about you, Pete?
You can find me on Twitter at Pete Barbero1. That's a numeral 1. You can find me maybe on Instagram at Regulation Gaming, and you can find me on Twitch doing new and old and various degrees of niche PC game streaming, and I'm getting set up to do some retro console games here pretty soon too, at twitch.tv/RG Halfpenny. Yeah, that's it.
All right, awesome. Well, it's been a lovely time here on Retro Encounter, and we'll see you next time with more Mario and Luigi. Good night, and good luck, and enjoy the mustard of your doom.